So you've decided to start saving for real. For real, for real. Bringing homemade lunch to work, deleting your Uber account, skipping happy hour, swearing off ShopBot. How does it feel? How much have you saved? Maybe you're just bad at saving. Just kidding. Maybe it's that life is expensive, saving is important, and while we want to do the right thing with our money, we also don't want to compromise. Maybe it's that we've been taught to think of saving all wrong. The culprit? Budgeting. I'm gonna be real, I hate budgeting. Some of you might be thinking, cool, because I hate budgeting too. Or you might be thinking, WTF, here I am trying to learn how to be smart with my money and you're telling me not to budget? I know. In the traditional world of finance, flipping the bird to budgeting is controversial, but I'm serious, and here's why. Okay, so on paper, budgeting totally makes sense. Create limits, don't overspend, use the money left over to save. It also provides us with guidelines to ensure we don't spend more money than we actually earn. Sounds logical, right? But there are 3 problems with budgeting. Number 1, there's no such thing as a typical month. People tell me all the time, ignore my spending last month, stuff came up. Friends visited from out of town, there was some limited time offer, couldn't pass up, you walked past Sephora, whatever. There's always something. Budgets are rigid, but life is unpredictable. Number 2, budgeting makes us feel guilty. We end up negotiating with ourselves constantly. If we spend more in one area, we compensate by spending less in another. We do this song and dance all month long, making ourselves feel like financial failures for not sticking to our self-imposed limits. Number 3, no one actually wants to budget. Given the choice, who would choose to micromanage themselves and every dollar they spend? Spreadsheets in your spare time? No thanks. What you actually want is to enjoy your money and not think twice when you swipe your card. It's not you that sucks, it's budgeting. Okay, so if budgeting doesn't work, what does? Let me introduce you to the reverse budget. Yeah, I know, it doesn't sound any sexier than regular budgeting, but it is. Traditional budgeting is all about limiting your spending first and then saving after. Reverse budgeting focuses on saving first so you can spend the rest, guilt-free, and no spreadsheets. Think about what you're saving for and how much you need to save. Be specific. Long weekend in Palm Springs, $1,000. Swanky new West Elm couch, $2,500. No more roommates, $5,000. Retire by 50? Your goals should have timeframes too. These timeframes will vary based on whether your goal is short-term, like your California desert getaway, or long-term, like retirement. Based on when you want to achieve your goals, you can now reverse engineer how much you need to save and how often. You can always adjust your timeline if needed. And this doesn't mean you need to figure out every life goal in your 20s and 30s. It just means having a plan instead of winging it. You can create several savings accounts for your goals and then nickname them according to what you're saving for. Studies show that by simply nicknaming your savings account, you're much less tempted to tap it for something other than what it's intended for. These accounts can be for travel, for home improvements, whatever. I'm also a fan of having a savings account for winter holidays so that you can buy gifts without feeling gutted by your credit card statement in January. For most people, 3 to 5 accounts is the right number, with one of those being your emergency fund. More on that in a bit. And by the way, this doesn't include retirement. That's also coming up a bit later. Once you've got your savings accounts created and nicknamed, set up an automatic bank transfer so that money is going towards your goal accounts without you even having to think about it. This can be a monthly transfer, every other week, or whatever works for you. Just make sure you always initiate the transfer from your online bank. If you initiate the transfer from your checking account, you might get hit with a transfer fee. After the transfers go through, whatever's left in your checking account is yours to blow, guilt-free. Remember a hot minute ago when we were talking about whether or not you could really afford your lifestyle? Yeah, well, reverse budget means you never have to worry about that. You're automatically saving up for that Palm Springs budgetary bender. The money is there. And when you've got enough money to book the trip, you can put it all on your credit card, reap those rewards points, knowing you have the money to pay it off in full. Just transfer the money from your specific savings account to your checking account and use it to pay off your credit card bill. Living a lifestyle you can afford, hacking rewards points, building a solid credit score, you're winning. If you're in a relationship, this system is a huge lifesaver. Instead of stressing about what your significant other is spending money on, You can just put your joint financial goals on autopilot and pretty much turn a blind eye to the rest. It literally doesn't affect your ability to accomplish any of the stuff you really care about. If you're looking for more ways to achieve money goals at the same time you're achieving your couple goals, check out our Couples and Money class for couples-specific strategies. Also, check out the resources section at the end of this chapter for a step-by-step guide on how to set up the reverse budget for you.
Mama said it wasn't gonna be easy.
Next up, the emergency fund, rainy day fund, fuck off fund, whatever you want to call it. When I worked on Wall Street, one of the biggest mistakes I'd see really wealthy people make was not having an emergency fund. This is a money mishap that no one, wealthy or not wealthy yet, can afford to make. An emergency fund is a small stash that can get you through an unexpected tough time, like the loss of a job, or a medical bill, or an expensive home repair. Our philosophy on emergency funds is different from most other financial pros. Your old school financial advisor will tell you that your emergency fund should cover 6 to 12 months worth of your expenses. That's a lot of money. Our take is that your emergency fund should have no more than 3 months worth of fixed expenses in it. If rent, bills, student loan payments, groceries, health insurance, pet care costs come to around $3,000 per month, a good target for your emergency fund is $9,000. No more, no less. Why aren't we on board with a typical 6 to 12 months worth of your expenses approach? Because your emergency fund is your first line of defense, not your only line of defense. Plus, it takes a long time to save up that much money. That's time you could be spending working towards other financial goals. And in our experience, Henrys and aspiring Henrys are hustlers. If shit hits the fan and we lose our jobs, we're at a place in our careers where we're able to grind to find opportunities pretty quickly. That said, you know your industry best, gauge how long it might take to replace your income, and then adjust your emergency fund accordingly. One more thing, a credit card is not an emergency fund. Say it with me, a credit card is not an emergency fund.
Time is money, so spend it wise.
So here's a bad habit that most of us are guilty of at some point or another, moving money from a savings account right back to a checking account to use it to pay bills. If you're doing that, what's the point of even putting the money in savings in the first place? But so many of us do it. If this rings true for you, I'm guessing you have your checking and savings account at the same bank. Time to switch it up by splitting it up. Keep your checking account where it is, but move your savings account, preferably online, as in to an online-only bank that you can't walk into. There are 2 reasons for doing this. Number 1, if your checking account and your savings account are in different places, it becomes a little bit harder to play the old transfer back and forth game. Who has time for interbank transfers? Not you, not me. Number 2, because online-only banks don't have a physical presence and all the overhead costs that come with it, they're able to pass that savings on to you in the form of a higher interest rate, which in most cases is many, many times higher than what you're getting from your brick and mortar bank. Here's an example. Let's say you're saving up for a pretty big purchase, like your wedding or maybe a down payment on a home. You've done a great job saving with almost $20,000 stashed away. If you kept that $20,000 in a savings account at a regular brick and mortar bank, you'd earn under $10 in interest throughout the year. Insulting. At an online-only bank, the same $20,000 could earn you more than $450 per year in interest. Sure, you're not exactly retiring on that money, but hey, it pays for a couple extra fancy dinners or round-trip airfare. Oh, and in case you're wondering, online banks are just like regular banks. Your money sits in cash and is FDIC insured. If you want, you can totally keep your checking account at an online bank too. Some people like to keep their accounts at a brick and mortar bank for those random times they need to deposit cash, like getting birthday money from grandma. But if that's not you, there's no reason why you couldn't keep both your checking and savings accounts at an online bank. These days, most of the online banks will refund the fees you incur for using ATMs, so that's almost never an issue. Remember, after everything we talked about in the credit card section, there's really no reason to use cash unless you need it for something like the farmer's market or maybe a cash-only restaurant. The only catch is that if your checking and savings accounts are at the same online bank, you lose that out-of-sight, out-of-mind benefit I spoke about earlier. If you're disciplined, no problem. If you don't want to be tempted to transfer between accounts, split them up between different banks. One more thing, Remember that the ultimate point of saving your money is so that you can spend it someday. We've seen so many people get so addicted to watching their account balances grow that they almost forget that the point of automating their savings is so that they have money to spend on the things and experiences they value. Once you hit your savings goals, book that trip and blow that money guilt-free. It's a concept we refer to as responsibly reckless. We've talked about how to save and where to save. On to the obvious question, how much to save? And how do we really balance saving for all the things, like first homes and weddings and retirement and student loans and childcare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's break down how much of your money should be going towards savings and how much should be going towards debt, and more importantly, how much is left over for life.
Mama said it wasn't gonna be easy. Yeah.
If you're working on paying off debt, here are the targets we suggest aiming for. 10% for the future. This is for short, mid, long-term financial goals, which we'll dig into these in a few more minutes. But this includes those savings goals we mentioned earlier, like Mexican beach vacations and retirement. 20% for debt, like credit cards, student loans, and personal loans. This, however, does not include car payments or mortgage payments. Those are fixed expenses, which will file under the next category. 70% for life. This is your rent, your mortgage, your car loan, your cell phone bill, your groceries, but it's also your fancy Korean skincare routine, your NBA TV subscription, your takeout microgreen salad habit. If you don't have debt that you're paying off, your breakdown will look a little bit more like this. 20% for the future, those short, mid, and long-term financial goals, and 80% for life, the bills, expenses, and the fun stuff. As you can see, as soon as you're debt-free, you can upgrade your lifestyle by 10% and increase your savings by 10% as well. If you want to break down the 80% into specifics, we can. Here's typically what we recommend. 50% for life, for fixed expenses like rent or mortgage, but also other fixed costs like utilities, groceries, your cell phone bill, insurance, pet care, and so on. And then 30% for the lifestyle enhancing stuff. The skincare products, the specialty TV channels, the fancy salads. This 50-30 split might be feeling ridiculous to some of you. Maybe you live in a big city where rents are crazy high. Maybe you have to feed kids or daycare to pay for. Hear this, it doesn't really matter how you break up that 80%. If you live in an expensive city or have unavoidably high fixed expenses, 50% for bills and fixed costs might seem like a pipe dream. That's fine. It's working towards that 80% spending, 20% savings target that really matters most. If you need to allocate more money to your fixed expenses and less to your flexible, it's all good. Just don't take away that extra money for bills from your savings. Take it away from your lifestyle extras. And keep in mind that all of these guidelines, whether you have debt or not, are something to work towards. If you can't hit them overnight, don't stress. Make them your goal. Implement them when you get a bump in salary, even a small one, so you can avoid lifestyle creep and start getting ahead. How are you feeling? Inspired? Overwhelmed? If you're a little stressed out because you're living paycheck to paycheck and already feel like you're doing everything you can, check out the resources section. We filled it with free tools, or at least affordable tools, and apps that really do work. One last thing. In personal finance, there are only two levers you can pull to get ahead. Make more or spend less. Earning more is obviously a lot more fun. If you feel like your income isn't supporting the lifestyle you want, maybe it's time to take on a side hustle. You'll find some helpful guides in the resources section.
Hi, I'm Michael Brown, out here on the mean streets of New York trying to find out just how good at saving money New Yorkers really are. This is Benny for Your Thoughts.
Oh, I'm feeling like
Before I got married, I saved for 3 straight years, not doing anything. Every single penny I made, bonuses, I was in a sales company, tax refunds, I saved $50K in 3 years. So if I was dating a girl, she would come over my house, she would eat dinner there. Like I got wine, I got vodka, we ain't going out. No drinks, we're not going out. And I see that's a big problem today with the kids today. Because they pay these top dollar rents, they can't save money for a house. It's a big problem today.
What's your relationship to money saving?
Absolutely terrible. Thank God I have a CD. It's all tied up in the CD.
I love to save. That's a big factor in life, is saving, yeah.
For $100, Would you be willing to answer some invasive questions? Right now, how much do each of you have in your savings account? How much do you have in there?
Well,
I think around 6,000.
Okay.
I think around 10,000.
it's close to like 100,000.